Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the online series 2 VGC ladder in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and provide live commentary as I go. In this video, I'm going to be trying out a team built by 2017 World Champion Ryota Otsubo featuring Sandy SHOCKS. Now, Sandy SHOCKS is a Paradox Pokemon that doesn't see a ton of play in competitive VGC right now, but I think it definitely has some very interesting use cases. Some people actually use it with Gravity paired with a Hypnosis user, for example. This set is actually a more like Hyper Offense set where it's got Thunderbolt, Earth Power, Substitute, and Protect with Booster Energy. And the idea is with Booster Energy as well as Electric Terra, it can just deal massive amounts of damage to so many Pokemon in the format. In addition, I wanted to feature the team because it has one of my all-time favorite Pokemon in Scizor. Scizor is a Pokemon that has some interesting value in the format at the moment because it can Bullet Punch Fluttermane, and priority in general in this format I think is just really valuable given how frail certain Paradox Pokemon like Fluttermane and Iron Bundle are. And so, yeah, really excited to feature this team. As always, I'll do a quick breakdown, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps down in the description below. And thanks so much as always for watching. Hope you've been enjoying Series 2 so far, and I'm so pumped to just make all of these videos for all of you. So if you enjoy, I'd really appreciate it if you consider leaving a like on the video or subscribing to the channel. Anyway, let's get started here. Talking about the team now, and by the way, as always, there's a rental and paste down in the description below if you want to try out the team yourself. And question of the day, I want to know what the most unique Paradox Pokemon set you've tried out or gone up against so far has been down in the comment section below. But as I mentioned in the introduction, Sandy SHOCKS is just really interesting because, first of all, Electric Ground is like fairly unique coverage, and there are a lot of Pokemon in the format right now that, of course, do take super effective damage from one of those two typings. For example, Arcanine, Garganacl, Iron Bundle, just to name a couple. And so, yeah, you've got some really unique offensive coverage and a really solid base speed and special attack as well. As I mentioned, there are different ways you can use this Pokemon. I've seen some players use Gravity. You can use it in a more support-oriented manner. This is just as offensive as it gets, right? It's max speed, max special attack, and you're designing to just, deal large amounts of damage as quickly as possible. So the moves are pretty straightforward here. The one thing I'll call out is the Substitute. With Substitute, you can often use that when you have combos like Fluttermane and Sandy SHOCKS and your opponent is like in a really bad offensive position, and they'll like try to protect one Pokemon and switch the other Pokemon out to kind of, get into a better position. That's where Substitute can be really, really valuable. And Sandy SHOCKS honestly is not like that frail. It's got decent base HP and defenses, so I generally wouldn't expect this to get one shot by most Pokemon as long as it's not a super effective attack, even without any bulk, which is pretty nice for this Pokemon. The Sandy SHOCKS is really nice when combined with Fluttermane because Fluttermane here has Icy Wind speed control. And so, there are a fair amount of Pokemon between the 101 to 135 base speed range. And so against those Pokemon, Fluttermane can just drop their speed immediately with an Icy Wind. And then Sandy SHOCKS can just deal large amounts of damage with Thunderbolt or Earth Power. And so this Fluttermane is pretty straightforward. The one thing I'd call out here is Dazzling Gleam instead of Moonblast. This just gives you good spread coverage rather than, rely on only hitting one Pokemon. But of course, there's a big trade-off in terms of damage output. And so you'll be dealing less damage to things that you normally want to hit for really hard, such as Brute Bonnet, for example, or Iron Hands. So, yeah. Brute Bonnet is the next Pokemon to talk about here. This is a offensive set, but it's got max HP as well. It basically feels very similar to a Moongus, but it can actually deal damage. You've got Close Combat and Sucker Punch. Close Combat in particular is really nice into King Gambit, which otherwise can be somewhat annoying to go up against, depending on the Terra typing, for example. And Spore and Rage Powder are self-explanatory. I think what's interesting is I actually never really clicked Sucker Punch with Brute Bonnet, but the reason Sucker Punch exists is so you can go with Brute Bonnet and Scizor, for example, and like Bullet Punch Sucker Punch into an opposing Fluttermane and just knock them out before they can even move. Sucker Punch obviously gives you good coverage into certain Pokemon like Golden Go as well, and with your base 127 attack, it actually can deal a ton of damage. But Brute Bonnet gets some interesting offensive options. You could, of course, use Crunch. I've had a lot of games actually where I would have preferred Crunch into like NDD Armarouge, for example. You can also run Bullet Seed with Loaded Dice. That's a combination that some people use. One other thing to consider is with this 31 speed IV and 4 speed EVs, min speed Armarouge can actually underspeed you, or aka outspeed you under Trick Room. And so you could consider like re-EVing the Brute Bonnet so that you always outspeed Armarouge under Trick Room, but that's just some food for thought. And I bring that up because I lost against a lot of NDD Armarouges while trying to practice with this team. So yeah, I'd also say that this team like took me a while to get, and partially, it's a brand new format, but I probably played like 10 games with it to try to get the hang of it. And I feel like I went like 3-7 in my first 10. And I feel like afterwards it started clicking, but yeah, if it doesn't click for you immediately, don't worry, it took me a while to understand like the nuances between the team or behind the team. To round things out, you've got Fire Tauros here. This is just max attack, max speed, Raging Bolt, Close Combat, Will-O-Wisp, Protect with Grass Terra. This Grass Terra plus Will-O-Wisp and Intimidate is just really nice. I feel like Intimidate's making a bigger comeback in the format right now. Arcanine's one of the most common Pokemon. Tauros started seeing kind of a rise in usage towards the end of Series 1. That was mainly Water Tauros, but Fire Tauros can be valuable into this format as well. And there's just so many physical attackers, such as the Paradoxmon. So yeah, it's just a really solid Pokemon. Covert Cloak here is pretty interesting. It can help against a bunch of different things, whether it be Fake Out or, for example, Sulk here from Garganacl, and you can just deal a lot of damage. Grass Terra here is really valuable defensively to help against Water-type Pokemon like Palafin or Dondozo, for example. Finally, to round out the team, you've got Assault Vest Scizor. Now, I wanted to use this team because it had Sandy Shocks and Scizor. Scizor is one of my all-time favorite Pokemon, and it's just been pretty lackluster in VGC for a while, but the value of Scizor is, first of all, it's just fairly bulky with Assault Vest, so this is actually really nice into, say, like, Psychic Pokemon, especially, like, Armarouge that wants to spam Expanding Force, for example. You've got Dragon Terra here to kind of cover for the Fire weakness, which I think is fun. Dragon Terra isn't exactly that common. And, yeah, you've just got good coverage with Pounce, Bullet Punch, Brick Break, and Thief, and the idea is with Technician, you obviously boost the damage output of all of those attacks. And so, yeah, Priority, I think, is making a comeback, especially given how frail, like, Fluttermane is, like, base, 55 HP and defense. Bullet Punch can just demolish this Pokemon, right? And so that's one of the reasons why Scizor is kind of making a comeback right now. Final Pokemon is Murkrow. Murkrow's main job is, as, it was before, to set up Tailwind. You also have Brave Bird, which gives you some unique coverage. I think most of the times people expect foul play from Murkrow, but Brave Bird allows you to hit things like Brute Bonnet, for example, and so it allows you to deal a little bit more damage into things that generally don't expect it, which is nice. Haze is mainly for Dondozo and any opposing setup teams, and Sunny Day is really cool with this team because you can actually use Sunny Day to activate the photosynthesis on your Pokemon. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I think that's one of the things that I've maybe done least effectively while practicing with this team, like actually utilizing Sunny Day to activate all of the different photosyntheses. But yeah, that's kind of the idea behind it, which I think is really cool. So there's a lot of different ways you can play with it. You can go hyper offense, like just Fluttermane, Sandy Shocks with two of these attackers in the back. You can set up Tailwind, go for like Murkrow plus Sandy Shocks, Murkrow plus Fluttermane, sacrifice Murkrow, and then just go with your attackers here. It's really just about finding which Pokemon has like super effective coverage into the opposing side and just trying to, outmaneuver your opponent with offense, because this team is really offensive, right? Like these Pokemon all have either max attack or max special attack EV investment. So yeah, that's it for the team. Let's quickly highlight some weaknesses. So in terms of weaknesses, I will say that one general archetype I struggled a lot against was just Trick Room, because against Trick Room, especially when they have like Indeedee, for example, the Murkrow is just completely useless, and there's not that much bulk to work with on this team either, right? Like out of these Pokemon, you have two Pokemon with max HP, but you can't really protect with either Scizor or Brute Bonnet, and so against just like Armarouge Indeedee, I've actually struggled a lot against it. That's not to say that it's unwinnable. Like Brute Bonnet's going to be your best means against it because you can put things to sleep, but it kind of comes down to the speed interaction. And what, as I mentioned in the covering the team, like Brute Bonnet here is interesting because it actually outspeeds min speed Armarouge, but that means if they set up Trick Room, the Armarouge can outspeed you under Trick Room, which is a little bit awkward. So you could adjust that potentially by, changing the EV spreads here, but also like if they have Safety Goggles or Grass Terra Armarouge, for example, that slops the spores. Often the Brute Bonnet's going to want to, go for Terra to get around the, for example, the Armor Cannon, but then Expanding Force just does a lot of damage into it. So I've struggled a lot against Trick Room because there aren't protects on Brute Bonnet or Scizor, and like these Pokemon are relatively frail and can go down fairly quickly. So it's one general archetype. I think the other thing is that Sandy Shocks does have good coverage, but Thunderbolt and Earth Power, they're like pretty strong, but there are a fair amount of Pokemon that just like don't take any damage from it, and that's mainly like ground type Pokemon. So I'm thinking about things like Great Tusk or Gastrodon, for example, where the photosynthesis boosted Earth Power, it's okay, but it just doesn't deal like that much damage to really bulky ground types. Ground Terra, of course, is also something to watch out for that I'm always a little bit afraid of, because then it can just completely invalidate the Thunderbolt, and then they can retaliate back with a lot of damage in return. So yeah, that's like something. There's situations where I brought Sandy Shocks and it kind of just gets pinned where I'm like, oh, I'm not really dealing much damage, and like my opponent's completely immune to Thunderbolt, for example, so I'm caught in a tricky position. That can also be kind of bad. I think in general, this team, you can really expose like the lack of protects on both Scizor and Brute Bonnet. So I've had games where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not really doing that much damage with either of these Pokemon at this point, but if you're switching, you're often switching to something that doesn't love taking a lot of damage, like Flutter Mane or Sandy Shocks, for example, right? Similarly with Tauros, like, Raging Bolt Close Combat Willis can be really valuable, but I've had games where it's like, okay, I'm up against, like, a Pelipper, and suddenly none of these moves do anything, so I feel like I'm kind of forced to switch out. I think one thing about this team is you really want to snowball your momentum in terms of damage, and ideally I'm often looking for, like, double ups so that I don't have to switch. Now, that's not to say you can't switch with this team, right? Like, Scizor, Tauros, and Brute Bonnet actually all enable decent defensive pivots, but what can be awkward is if they're stuck on the field and then you want to bring in Sandy Shocks or Flutter Mane in the back. And so if you're playing against this team, you can kind of utilize it to your advantage and be like, okay, well, you can't protect with Brute Bonnet and Scizor. Maybe you're in a position where you can't do much damage with them either, so you're kind of forced to switch out or just take a knockout or eat up a knockout, for example. I'd also say with Flutter Mane, the fact that it has Dazzling Gleam over Moonblast can be kind of used to opponents' advantages, saying, okay, well, I know you don't have Moonblast, and so I know I can take, you know, even the super effective Dazzling Gleam with something like an Iron Hands, for example, a little bit better. And Icy Wind and Dazzling Gleam obviously get walled by Wide Guard as well, so that's one thing to watch out for. I had one game, by the way, where I played against a Garganacl, and I just got completely walled by it, because I think I went, like, Flutter Mane, Sandy Shocks, Brute Bonnet, Murkrow, and it was a Grass Garganacl, and so against Garganacl, like, that's a Pokemon that can survive even super effective hits. You're going to want to cover for, like, the different kinds of Terras, Poison, Ghost, and Grass being the main ones that I've seen. And Scizor actually ends up being really valuable into it, as well as the Sandy Shock. So against Garganacl, I think one of the lessons I learned is I really need Scizor, because when I played it against the first time, it was Grass Terra, and, like, my Murkrow went down early, and then Brute Bonnet, Sandy Shocks, and Flutter Mane. Like, I just couldn't do anything with any of these, other than hope for, like, Shadow Balls or Icy Winds, but then they obviously had Wide Guard as well. So, yeah. The last thing to call out is just, once again, you're not very bulky with Flutter Mane or Sandy Shocks, and so I've had games where it's like these Pokemon do a lot of damage, but they don't quite secure the knockout, and then just faint in return. So Pokemon that can survive a +1 or a boosted, not technically +1, boosted Thunderbolt from Photosynthesis, plus Electric Terror, like, that can go a long way in itself. So, yeah. Anyway, that's it for the weaknesses. Let's get into these battles. Okay, we got Palafin, Arcanine, Iron Hand, Scizor, Pelipper, and the Flutter Mane on the opposing side. So Sandy Shocks is pretty interesting here. I think Thunderbolt and Earth Power are actually both really good coverage. I like Sandy Shocks. Brute Bonnet is somewhat weak here. We gotta face Moonblast, Hurricane, Scizor, and Arcanine, and the Iron Hands. The main reason to bring Brute Bonnet is because I think it has a fairly favorable matchup into the Palafin, which otherwise can be kind of annoying. Honestly, really don't mind a Sandy Shocks Murkrow lead, set up Tailwind early. Grass Terra makes this really valuable, actually, into Palafin, so I think we probably bring Tauros. And it's probably Flutter Mane as the fourth, although honestly Scizor is somewhat interesting here because of Bullet Punch into their Flutter Mane. That's all it's really good for, though, in my opinion. Yeah, I think Scizor is just way too weak until the rest of their team. We do have Pounce, I guess, but... Alright, let's go with this. So I think the main thing that stands out is that Sandy Shocks offensively is actually really good into their entire team, but obviously we have to take into account that Sandy Shocks can go down also fairly easily. I think one of the things that's always interesting about playing like a new gen and learning new Pokemon is getting used to like unique type combinations. We're gonna go with Palafin and Iron Hands. Okay. This is actually pretty scary, right? Because they do pressure with Fake Out immediately with Iron Hands. I could Ghost Terra here to basically get around a potential Fake Out and guarantee Tailwind on turn 1. It's honestly decently valuable. Palafin's not that strong right now. I also don't hate the idea of protecting and then switching out into Tauros right now. I'm only... I don't know. Maybe they like... Oh, Palafin actually hard switches. Okay, that works for me. Into Arcanine. Cool. I think that's great. So this makes me think they have Pelipper and Palafin in the back, right? So I'm going to bring out Tauros. I'm going to be able to Will-O-Wisp the Iron Hand slot next turn. I think the main question with Sandy Shocks is, do I want to Earth Power Arcanine? Because I would actually predict them to maybe switch out into Pelipper, meaning I can Thunderbolt that slot. But I would say, all things considered, this is a fairly nice turn 1, and I don't even need Tailwind right now. So there's Protect. Yep. Fake out into Sandy Shocks. Cool. Yeah, so I definitely want to click Will-O-Wisp into this right now. It's just whether or not I should Earth Power Arcanine. It's kind of tempting here. I don't know. If I were them, I'd probably personally switch into Pelipper. They don't have a switch into Thunderbolt, so I think I'm okay just clicking Thunderbolt into Arcanine here, and then just Will-O-Wisp into Iron Hands. Iron Hand switches. It might be Pelipper in that slot, honestly, but let's see. Yep. That's fine by me. Will-O-Wisp means I break a potential Focus Sash. And Arcanine protects. Yep. I think they've been playing this really well so far. That's fine by me, though, because, like, the reality is Sandy Shocks is just applying so much offensive pressure, right? And I think this is where the game now gets very interesting, right? Because, like, Rain is up. I can obviously Thunderbolt Pelipper. I think the main thing, honestly, is actually to look out for a potential defensive Terra with Pelipper, like a Ground Terra from Pelipper right now. So, like, I'm actually intrigued by the idea of Terraing here defensively, so I don't just faint to, like, a Hydro Pump should they do that. Clicking Earth Power into Arcanine to get the knockout onto that slot. Okay, actually, the downside is if I Terra, then I can't Grass Terra with this. And having Grass Terra for this actually feels really valuable. I don't hate substituting here, it's just Earth Power is so much offensive pressure into Arcanine right now. Okay, I'm going for Earth Power and then just switching Murkrow out. I think where this can go wrong is if the Pelipper just goes for an offensive attack into Sandy Shocks. Like, I don't know, Ground Terra or Grass Terra into a Hydro Pump is what I was most worried about here. But Pelipper switches. Okay, that is really good for us. It's probably Iron Hands coming back out. I love that name, by the way. It's Arcanine going for the Terra. Okay. That makes sense. Terra Water Arcanine. Are they going to have Terra Blast here? Oh my gosh. What are the odds of running into that? Okay, so they have Sitrus Berry. Yep. No, they just Snarl. Okay. I was like, if they actually have Terra Blast, I'm going to be so sad. Anyway, this is kind of funny because we're in, like, a similar situation to where we were earlier, right? But, like, they still just don't really have that solid of an answer into Sandy Shocks, right? Which I can leverage to my advantage. Snarl's pretty annoying. I'd love to conserve Focus Sash on this. It might be another Fake Out. I could Terra, Tailwind, but I don't know. Fake Out onto Sandy Shocks makes sense to me. I'm down to keep playing this dance, basically, because I think they're losing more resources than I am, right? I've, like, burnt Pelipper, which breaks a potential Focus Sash. I forced the Terra out of Arcanine already. And they're going to bring out Pelipper. Sure, this works. Because now they don't have a defensive Terra, right? So I can Thunderbolt into the Pelipper slot and Will-O-Wisp into the Iron Hand slot super safely. So it's been interesting, but I feel like Sandy Shocks is just so strong here, and even with all these good defensive pivots by my opponent, it still hasn't been that bad. This Protect is fairly obvious, though, so I wonder if, you know, Iron Hand tries to capitalize off by going for an attack, but they end up Drain Punching into that slot. Okay. Cool. I mean, I think this is where the game gets interesting. Does Pelipper have Protect? A lot of Pelippers don't even carry Protect, so I am just going to click Thunderbolt into that slot, and I'm just going to Will-O-Wisp again into Iron Hands. Basically, right now, I don't feel the need to make aggressive predictions because I have the team advantage with Sandy Shocks, and Sandy Shocks alone kind of beats all of my opponent's Pokemon right now, so I just want to get more information out from my opponent, right? We've already confirmed the Protect Snarl and the Sitrus plus Water Terra from the Arcanine, and yeah, they're actually just going to stay in with both Pokemon here. So if Will-O-Wisp does not miss, I think we're in amazing shape. Nice. Okay. Beautiful. This honestly was the perfect matchup for Sandy Shocks. And they just Drain Punch. That did no damage. Wow. Between Intimidate and the burn. So I think the main thing to watch out for now, obviously, is going to be the Palafin. It is decently well positioned, but we can just Terra Grass here and Will-O-Wisp into them. Also, there's Sunny Day on this. It's the last turn of Rain, but they might have been Damp Rock. I think the only debate here is whether or not I actually want to just switch out into Murkrow immediately. Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I don't think Murkrow actually really provides us that much value at this point in the game anyway. I'm going to Grass Terra and then just burn Palafin. Palafin is so powerful that I think we really do have to respect it, but with the burn now, Onslaught Iron Hands, with them already committing their Terra, and with me having Flutter Mane in the back, I think we're pretty well positioned. Grass Terra here is really handy as well with Tauros. The only downside is I would have loved to like switch Tauros out and back in. I don't know, I guess I could have protected Sandy Shocks and then switched the Murkrow in for that slot, but yeah, they're just going to Jet Punch into that slot. Perfect. And Tauros does not miss either Will-O-Wisp in this game, so that should secure us. Actually, more than 2. We hit 3 Will-O-Wisps in a row, which is very fortunate. And they just Volt Switch here. Perfect. Beautiful. And we're at the point in the game now where I think Sandy Shocks can just sweep through everything, especially once I set up Sun. Although, one of the interesting debates here is, do I actually want to set up the Sun, because then Arcanine does more damage to me with Flare Blitz. So let's see if the Rain is still around. There's the burn. Ah, they are Damp Rock. Okay. Well, given that, do I want a Sunny Day, actually? We don't really need a Tailwind. Tauros isn't really doing that much damage right now. Haze does get rid of this Intimidate on me. You know what? I'm kind of down to actually Haze then, and just Close Combat into Arcanine. I don't mind pushing the tempo a little bit. Okay. Now we're neutral, Close Combat into Arcanine. It does survive, but if they Flare Blitz, they'll faint from Recoil. And they just Wave Crash here, that's fine. Okay. I think, like, the reason I was willing to go for that is because if I get that knockout, I feel like I should just win the game immediately. They actually go for their own Will-O-Wisp, which is fine. Now I can bring out Flutter Mane. I will say, though, yeah, like, maybe it was actually important to set up the Sun, because Palafin still packs a huge punch, no pun intended. But we're pretty close to stalling out the Rain. So I think it's fine. I will bring out, because like Sandy Shocks take super effective damage, right? So like I want the Rain to expire. We also have confirmed that it's not Choice Banded or Scarfed, which is good. I was just thinking Haze and Close Combat would get that KO, and I think that trade is worth it. But since Arcanine survived, I would have been better off clicking Sunny Day, I think. But 2 turns of Rain left. Burn is still chipping away. I'm happy to just protect here and protect. Yeah, I think that's fine. And then we can just Dazzling Gleam into Close Combat. Tauros getting burnt is actually pretty annoying because it was going to be really good offensively in this endgame. So I still have to be really careful because of the priority that Palafin has to offer. Yeah, they're going to Jet Punch. Okay. And Snarl. Makes sense. They should actually protect Arcanine right now, in my opinion, and Jet Punch. Like, I honestly want to double up onto Palafin, Shadow Ball, and Close Combat it, because then Sandy's Shocks should just beat my opponent's endgame. Whereas, like, I don't think knocking out Arcanine with Dazzling Gleam is actually that essential right now, so I'd rather just prioritize KOing Palafin, and Arcanine does protect, yeah. Cool. We have Focus Sash here, so Flutter Mane will survive. Beautiful. Hopefully, Shadow Ball plus Close Combat plus the burn is enough to finish this. Should be, I think. Perfect. Cool. Now Sandy Shocks should... I mean, we could just Dazzling Gleam here, and then Sandy Shocks will obviously be able to knock out both. Tauros is so essential in this game, though, in my opinion. Okay. Iron Hands comes out. Yep. Obviously, they can fake out into Tauros. I'm happy to just Dazzling Gleam here. And switch out. Okay. Tauros switches. I think it was actually probably the correct play to stay in with both Pokemon here. I just really wanted Sandy Shocks to potentially deal the finishing blow in this game. As we'll be able to Gleam. Cool. And now I can just Gleam plus Earth Power for a KO. I think Sandy Shocks, though, was just so good into their entire team, right? Especially without, like, an immunity to Thunderbolt or Earth Power. Water Terra Arcanine's pretty interesting. I've not seen that too frequently, but... yeah, let's just, Shadow Ball and Earth Power. I don't think Shadow Ball KOs here. It would make me very happy to see Sandy Shocks to deliver the finishing blow, but unfortunately that's not the case. I think what's interesting about this game is, like, Sandy Shocks didn't necessarily just get every knockout, but applied so much pressure where my opponent basically had to commit so many resources in the first, like, 4 turns of the battle, where we, like, forced the Terror out, we got burns onto everything, and we got to learn a little bit more about their Arcanine moveset as well. So, yeah, I think the one play I would think about a little bit differently in this game is setting up Sunny Day with Murkrow, because once the sun is up, then Palafin's damage output, especially with it being burnt, is just really not very strong. So, I don't know, I thought it would be cool to haze and just get the one-hit knockout immediately onto the Iron Hand slot. But, yeah, games in this format can go on for quite a while, right? That was basically like a 15-minute battle, but Sandy Shocks right from turn 1 just applied so much pressure. And even though, like I said, it didn't end up necessarily just like sweeping through my opponent's team, that alone forced my opponent to respond in such a way where if I didn't have Sandy Shocks, they would have been able to use their team in a completely different manner, right? And so then we were able to just put in a lot of work with Tauros spreading the burns as well as just dealing decent damage with it. So, yeah. Ooh, we're actually up against an opposing Sandy Shocks. That's pretty interesting. Their team is really bulky. Arcanine, Gastrodon, Corviknight, Sandy Shocks, Brute Bonnet, and Roaring Moon. I'm pretty worried about Gastrodon, especially since we don't have Bullet Seed here. If I want to deal with Gastrodon, Flutter Mane's pretty essential. Don't really know if I want to bring Murkrow. I'm not sure it's worth it. I mean, I don't mind a Flutter Mane Sandy Shocks lead in this one, honestly. I want Scizor to deal with Gastrodon. If I bring Tauros... it's pretty good into a lot of their team, honestly. I'm just thinking Brute Bonnet here so I could Spore Gastrodon. It's not bad. Alright, I'll give Brute Bonnet a shot in this one. But I think this matchup is fairly scary, because, like, they generally have more bulk than I do. For example, by bringing Flutter Mane here, I'm just... I mean, I have a lot of damage output with it, but I'm also really frail, right? So the question is how much value I can get out of it. We're going to go with Gastrodon and Sandy Shocks. Okay. Like, I wonder if just a Shadow Ball plus an Earth Power can KO Gastrodon immediately. Love to do that. Otherwise, I can, like, Icy Wind this into Earth Power. I don't know. I also don't hate the idea of, like, Shadow Ball Gastrodon and then Substitute or Protect turn 1. Since I have Focus Sash, I'm down to try that out. But, like, if their Sandy Shocks doesn't Protect, I could have just gone Icy Wind, Earth Power into that slot. Nice. Perfect. Now I can do that next turn. Okay, I would expect Shadow Ball to do around 40% here, maybe more. Right around the money. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. Okay. That is exactly what I wanted to see. Now what? I'm tempted to click Icy Wind and Earth Power here into this, but that could so easily switch into Corviknight, which concerns me. I don't know. Gastrodon is a huge pain for me to deal with. I'm going to double into it even though it's a little bit risky. Yep, they do switch. Okay. If like even if they protect here, I think I'm still super well positioned going into next turn. So the first few turns of this battle have played out almost as well as I could have asked. And there's Corviknight. Yep. Beautiful. And they don't protect Gastrodon. Oh, that puts me in a really favorable spot now, in my opinion. As long as I get this KO. Okay, they're not Sitrus. I was worried that they'd be bulky enough where after Sitrus Berry they survive, but Sandy Shocks comes up huge for us here. And now Sandy Shocks is so good into the rest of their team, right? Especially Corviknight as well as their Shocks. So we've got Brute Bonnet in the back. That's not really good into Corviknight. They're just going to bring their Sandy Shocks back out. I kind of expect a defensive Terra from Corviknight here, but I guess I'm worried about Tailwind. I could Icy Wind, but Mirror Armor would bounce that back. They know I have Earth Power as well. I do kind of want to just click Icy Wind, Earth Power this turn and see how it plays out. So they're going to Terra. I would expect Corviknight to be the one Terraing here, but let's see. Yeah, perfect. Huh. Dragon? That's interesting. That makes you weak to Icy Wind now. And Dazzling Gleam. Maybe it's Protect from Sandy Shocks. Wow, it's not. I feel like this game could not have gone any better so far. Because I feel like we should just KO Sandy Shocks now. Yeah, so Mirror Armor drops the speed to me, but it's fine. I mainly wanted to make sure I dropped their speed here. Beautiful. Oh my gosh. This duel is just putting in so much work, and we're basically taking advantage of the fact that my opponent's team is slower, right? Coming into this game, I was like, well, I'm kind of worried about the fact that Flutter Mane is so frail, but this duo has so much power behind it, and we're basically leveraging the fact that my opponent just doesn't have any way to outspeed me, and I have Icy Wind speed control from the Flutter Mane as well. Plus, Sandy Shocks already is faster than most of my opponent's team. I think the main thing that's benefited me in this game was I was able to read like the turn 1 protect, and then they just never protected afterwards, right? So Arcanine comes out, but Sandy Shocks is so well positioned right now. Maybe they Tailwind. I probably should switch this out, I think. I'm fine going into Brute Bonnet here. Substitute is actually pretty interesting here. Yeah, I'm down to go for that, because I think, like, their only way back into this game, I was going to say, was Arcanine Protect, and then Corviknight set up Tailwind, but, like, if they do that, I get the sub up, then the next turn I can just go for, like, Grass Terra, double up onto Arcanine, but yeah, we had built up such a big lead there that it made sense why my opponent forfeited in that position. So that's the main thing, right? Like, Sandy Shocks with that booster energy plus the Flutter Mane, like, it just combines for really good damage, and you have so much unique coverage, right? It's like Fairy, Ghost, Ice, Electric, and Ground between the two, which is just very powerful. And then the Icy Wind speed control means Flutter Mane can drop, you know, the Pokemon that's basically between Flutter Mane and Sandy Shocks' speed range. So yeah, I feel like these first two games have just really demonstrated how valuable Sandy Shocks can be as an offensive option into a lot of teams in this format. Okay, we are up against Trick Room. I think that's one of the worst matchups for this team, so we'll see how I can maneuver out of it. Yeah, basically the reason why this is so difficult is because I basically can't really deny Trick Room, which is a big problem. What's interesting is there's Sucker Punch on this, but there's no Crunch, right? And so, like, Sucker Punch with Psychic Terrain, just not really that valuable at all. Also, the tricky thing about bringing Brute Bonnet into a Trick Room matchup as best of one is not knowing whether or not they have Grass Terra, Safety Goggles, maybe both. And then, like, Murkrow basically is super useless here. It's really tough. Like, when I play against Trick Room, Scizor can pounce, which is kind of cool. Maybe I do have to bring Brute Bonnet and just Terra Fire turn 1 into Spore. I have not figured out the Trick Room matchup. I think I've lost pretty much every match I've had against Trick Room. I think this has to come out, given the physical attackers they have. The reason I don't love Sandy Shocks here is because of the Great Tusk on their team. Like, I just can't do anything into Great Tusk, really, and they can just KO us pretty easily in return. So, yeah. I think what makes this so tricky, and one interesting thing, like one tech you could have if you want to have a slightly favorable matchup into Indy Armarouge is actually Snarl Murkrow with max speed. You just outspeed Armarouge and just snarl it immediately. This is also where, like, if we were choice banned, we could actually just one-shot Indy immediately. But we're not banded. Because I can pounce and essentially Spore here. But, like, they might just have Safety Goggles. They might have Grass Terra. But there's no easy way to beat Indy Armarouge with this team, from my experience. It's not just Indy Armarouge, it's that plus all the different Trick Room components on their team. But we can't really one-shot Indy very easily. So they are just going to go for Follow Me to start. Okay. I would expect them to survive Pounce here. Yeah, so close, too. That's where if we had Life Orb or, like, Choice Band, for example, we'd get that knockout. You know, this isn't the worst case, though, honestly, because I will put them to sleep. And they set up Trick Room. I'm mainly curious how fast the Armarouge is. I don't have a switch into Armor Cannon. Because they could just so easily Armor Cannon Scizor. Because I want to Terra with this and Spore into Armarouge, basically. So I'm going to Thief, Armarouge, Fire Terra, and then Spore. NDD switches, okay. What is that? Great Tusk, sure. Yeah, I mean, so far, this is, like, as good as it can get in terms of trying to beat Trick Room, but it's still so difficult, especially because now by going for Fire Terra, Great Tusk threatens me more, which is concerning as well. Like, I don't know how I can really easily beat Great Tusk from this position. But we're faster with Brute Bonnet. Okay, that's huge. That is huge. So Armarouge will just eat a turn of sleep immediately. Oh, it's probably Speedy Armarouge then, given that, yeah, it's outspeeding here. That's actually really huge. I had a game where I had an Armarouge underspeed me. Which was really bad. So, ground fighting... It's just not that valuable right now. I mean, I want to just switch into Tauros and then just Spore into this. But they didn't have a booster energy. I'm really worried about it being Clear Amulet. I think if it's Clear Amulet, I probably just lose from this position, honestly. Okay, it's not. They switch. Oh, interesting. Maybe back out into Indeed, yeah. Ooh, a wake up here from Armor Rouge would be a nightmare. That was a really good play. Nicely done. I could have just stayed in with Scizor. They do stay asleep, though, which is lucky for us. I mean, the good thing right now is I'm actually, like, stalling out Trick Room, right? There are only 2 turns of Trick Room to deal with at this point, which is huge. It's probably Expanding Force coming out. I need to conserve this for them in the late game. I'm down to switch into Scizor. Hold on, let me make sure I'm switching the right thing out. Switch into Scizor here. And then just protect. Oh, I can't protect. Haha, JK. So this is going to be kind of weird, but I'm actually intentionally not knocking out the Indeedee because I don't want them to just get a free switch into Great Tusk. So I'm targeting Armor Rouge here. And basically, Indeedee has to take a turn of sleep right now. Yep, so there it is. And, like, I'm just looking to stall out Trick Room, essentially. So we don't knock out Armor Rouge, but that's fine. Like, the fact that I outspeed Armor Rouge with both Pokemon here is a really big deal. And they stay asleep. That's absolutely huge. Okay. That puts me into an incredible spot, actually. This is, by the way, why you see Safety Goggles or Grass Terra often on Armor Rouge. Because, like, otherwise Amoonguss and Brute Bonnet can actually give you some pretty big issues. But now, I can just go for Thief onto Armor Rouge. Pounce is fine. And then Close Combat into Indeedee. We've been very lucky with sleep turns in this game, right? Like, they stay asleep with Indeedee once again. So now we just get a double KO. And yeah, I think this is the only way I can really handle Trick Room, right? It's like you got to use Brute Bonnet and essentially put things to sleep. But there's so many things that could go wrong for us here. If they had Grass Terra on the Armor Rouge, if Armor Rouge was like, you know, Quiet Min Speed, if they have Safety Goggles, I just can't do this nearly as effectively. But let this example game show you why some people like to utilize Goggles or Grass Terra, right, on Armor Rouge. Because Amoonguss and Brute Bonnet both are going to be fairly common. There's Great Tusk. And Iron Hands. Okay, cool. That works for me. Booster energies on Iron Hands. Also, all things considered, we managed to stall out Trick Room and not take any damage, right? So let's try to secure this victory at this point. The switching from Scizor into Tauros is honestly so obvious. I think it's still fine to go for, though, given the early lead that we have. And I'll just Spore. It would be a shame to lose this after all of that early game, right? Like, this is an example of a matchup that I think is really difficult, but I had to have everything go my way, and everything did go my way. Like, they didn't end up having any of those items or Terras that I said, you know, would counter me. They actually don't fake out. Tusk is faster, but they just go for a knockoff, which is pretty ideal here. Beautiful. Okay, with that now, they just Wild Charge. Perfect. Ooh. That one shot. I mean, I know it was a crit, but still, wow. I was expecting to survive that, even with the crit. Very interesting. Okay, well, we can now bring out the Flutter Mane. We know that you are not Assault Vested on this, which is really good. So I'm happy to just Close Combat and Dazzling Gleam in this position. Dazzling Gleam is obviously really good into both. Oh, you know what? I guess they haven't Terra'd yet. I didn't want to risk missing Will-O-Wisp was my concern, but maybe I actually needed to go for it here. I also think Scizor is pretty well positioned for this endgame, but that crit, like, drastically changes things, right? And gives my opponent an opportunity to get back into it, so... Oh, interesting. It's going to be Great Tusk Terroring, okay? Into ground. That makes sense, but you have to take a guaranteed turn of sleep right now. We'll see if Iron Hands has Protect in this position. They don't. Cool. Beautiful, and that should just be a KO. We know that you're not Assault Vested since we saw the booster energy. Cool. Oof, this was Not an easy matchup, but I got very lucky. I can see why they switched the Great Tusk out, though. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, Great Tusk isn't exactly slow, right? I feel like I'm just used to seeing something like it and being like, oh, it's going to be a Trick Room Sweeper, but it's obviously not necessarily the case. Let's switch out into Scizor right now so I can bring out Intimidate once again. And just Shadow Ball here. And we have Focus Sash, so, like, you know, they would have to get multiple critical hits to win this endgame at this point. They'd have to wake up. Even if they, like, get every crit right... No, if they crit Scizor and crit the... I was the one that got the crit. I was going to say, if they crit Scizor and crit Tauros, could they win? I don't even know if, like, a crit Earthquake or, you know, crit Ground-type attack KOs. Like Headlong Rush, not Earthquake. With Headlong Rush, actually, that definitely should KO with the crit. That move is so powerful. Anyway, sorry. Let's just Bullet Punch and Shadow Ball. So... yeah, I think if you're going up against Trick Room, that's one of the solutions that I found, but it's still not that reliable if you run into Goggles or Grass Terror Armor Rouge, or even like Safety Goggles Entity, for example. It just stings because Pounce comes so close to knocking out Entity, but it doesn't actually quite get there, and that's like what makes all the difference, unfortunately. But yeah, we'll take it. Ooh, Iron Jugulus as well as Great Tusk, Fluttermane, and Iron Hands. I feel like right now I get excited seeing Paradox Pokemon in Team Preview because I just need more experience fighting against it. Like, the best way to learn Pokemon really is to just get more games in and, you know, play against all kinds of different teams and compositions. And especially when it's like the start of a new format, I care less about winning. Like, losing is actually so valuable because you can learn so much about, like, how to use different sets, right? So, this team is pretty scary. I don't really know how players are using Iron Jugulus right now. So that'll be fun to fight against. I think actually Scizor low-key here is a total monster. Because we've got Bullet Punch, we've got Brick Break, we've got Thief. Like, the coverage is actually wild. I don't think we bring Murkrow. I'm not sure I need that speed control. I like Sandy Shocks, but obviously has to worry about Great Tusk. Okay, I'm gonna go Tauros plus Scizor, Sandy Shocks, and Fluttermane. I don't know. I think it might be a mistake to not bring Brute Bonnet here. Like, I feel like Sucker Punch into Golden Go as well as the Fluttermane is honestly really valuable. So, and we have Close Combat into King Gambit. But the main thing was, like, I look at my opponent's team, and it's like they have so many physical attackers, right? So being able to intimidate them is really valuable. This is interesting. Okay. I've run into Fire Terra Iron Jugulus before. Booster Energy. Speed? Speed, speed, speed. I'd love to just Will-O-Wisp this. Don't really know what to do with Scizor right now, though, honestly. I like Pounce, I think, because then I can outspeed with Fluttermane. So Pounce Will-O-Wisp. There's a Terra. Okay. Oh boy, is it Fire Terra? Oh. That makes a lot of sense. I am in a lot of trouble. Oh. And they have Tailwind. Bulk Up! That's so cool! See, I would have never expected this in Team Preview, right? So this is what I mean. Like, losing to something like this, I totally don't mind because I honestly gain so much knowledge and information, but I am in a very bad position right now. Whoa! So it might be like Bulk Up lefties? I love it. I don't know how to get out of this. This is really bad already. Like, I can Pounce. They can just Earthquake and then, like, target Scizor. So I'm thinking Pounce and then bring out Fluttermane. Maybe I actually just protect here. I don't think another Intimidate actually helps me right now anyway. Oh, that's so cool. Fire Terra? Like, I was like, Fire Terra, fine, you know? But then Bulk Up also came out. Oh, is it gonna have Terra Blast? I would cry. Headlong Rush probably just KOs me too, right? Oh, it's Body Press. Okay. Well, out of all the options, I guess that works. So drop your speed. Slowly stalling out Tailwind. Yep, it's Body Press, Leftovers, Bulk Up, Fire Terra. What a cool set. I feel like so far everyone I've seen using this is like Assault Vest or maybe Booster Energy or whatnot. But I really love seeing that deviation. I mean, they might Air Slash. I just really don't want to switch in. 2 turns of Tailwind left. Like, I want to just Bullet Punch here. Raging Bull. There's Bullet Punch, but it's not going to KO. Yeah. Oh, the Air Slash Scizor. Oh, and then just Earthquake? Yeah, now I'm faster. Okay, that's where the speed control actually does come in handy. So we're being resourceful right now with Pounce. Okay, the way they split that up was really confusing to me, but I'll take it. Because they ended up Air Slashing Scizor and then Body Pressing us here. So far, honestly, this Bulk Up hasn't really helped them that much yet. Sandy Shocks with Earth Power is incredibly effective in dealing with them. They bring out Iron Hands. Okay. Do want to switch into Flutter Mane here. It's a little bit risky because Flutter Mane like might just take a lot of damage. Man, Iron Hands resists like everything. So Brick Break's our best damage here. Like I think I'm willing to make this switch because of the Focus Sash. And given like there were tendency to click Body Press, Flutter Mane is the perfect switch in right now to both Fake Out and Body Press. It's just like, it's a little bit risky making this play. Oh, okay, that works then. So you're not Assault Vested on that. That's good to know. Yeah, I don't know if that was worth it. Like, I eat up so much damage from Earthquake. No, I think it's fine because of Sandy Shocks. I don't know, though. If I had just given up both Pokemon... Okay, Earthquake, Body Press, Bulk Up. What is the fourth move on that? I would expect Protect, personally. This thing is super well positioned right now. I'll say that much. But, like... I think this turn is like, do I read a potential Protect properly? Also, does Earth Power get a one-hit knockout onto this? Is my other question. I honestly wanted to read into this. I mean, this just protected, so Tusk could protect. And I could sub. Kind of want to just send it and double up into Tusk here. It was so obvious. I don't know. Like, I could have just gone Earth Power. Yeah. It was just... Because we hadn't seen Protect either yet, right? So that was the other question I had. Like, whether or not they even had Protect on that moveset. Because if I just double up into Iron Hands there, I think I actually just win the game. But it's risky. Close combat. Okay, I do survive. So this is still winnable given that I survived. Comes down to what their last one is, but I'm just going to Earth Power right now and Dazzling Gleam. The thing is, I don't even know if I needed to Shadow Ball there, right? Like, maybe Earth Power is just a one-hit knockout, and now I'm not going for Shadow Ball. So maybe Tusk just ends up surviving. It also kind of boils down to what their final Pokemon is, but this was totally winnable, even after the surprise of the Fire Terra Tusk. I think, like... If I had just Dazzle Earth Power last turn... I don't know. That's, like, just a prediction I need to make, though. That was not even a critical hit? I feel like I'm too used to Assault Vest Iron Fist calcs. And obviously, they had the, Obviously, they had the special defense drop as well, but I did not think that would ever KO. I mean, that's a spread move. Huh. Well, it's a 3v1 now. The crazy thing is I could still lose this because Flutter Mane's their last one. And everything is so low on my end. Do I survive an icy win with this is the question, honestly. Oh, they could also just Dazzling Gleam. I mean, if I lose a speed tie and they just Dazzle, I kind of lose, right? Because everything is so low. I brought Scizor to try to beat this in the end game, but it's a little late. So I'm going to go protect Icy Wind here. And hope that they're not max speed. Nice. Okay, with that, then I think we actually win. Unless they, like, Trick Room on me. Oof. Okay. Yeah, you just Dazzle. I get Tauros out now. I know you're not, like, anything wild, like Choice Scarf. Let's bring out Tauros. Intimidate doesn't matter here. I mean, the Terras don't really provide any value at this point in the battle for me, right? Dazzle should just KO both Pokemon here, so I might as well just Terra to maximize Thunderbolt damage output. And Raging Bull. Okay. I really thought this was over after I played, like, those 2 turns poorly into Great Tusk. But, yeah, I think the fact they just, like, didn't protect Iron Hands and we just got a one-hit KO onto it with Dazzling Gleam was what made it possible. Okay, Electric Terra boosted Thunderbolt now. And that's a one-hit KO. Beautiful. Cool. But yeah, basically, I think if we had a speed tie between the Flutter Mains and they just Dazzling Gleam and move before I get the Icy Wind off, I actually just lose the game because Dazzling Gleam finishes off all 3 of my Pokemon. So, yeah, I may have gotten lucky there. And RNG's certainly been on my side throughout the course of this episode. But yeah, you know, anytime I go on these like big win streaks, I want to just keep playing. So let's look for one more. Dondozo Tatsugiri. With Garganacl, Abomasnow, Annihilate, and Farigiraf. I mean, this could have been a Series 1 team. Also, I like my opponent's username, Ash Ketchup. I actually don't have that much experience fighting against Dondozo with this team. Like, obviously, I feel like Murkrow is kind of essential. Honestly, Murkrow and Scizor is really interesting to me here. I probably won't bring Brute Bonnet. I'm thinking these 4. That feels okay to me. I think what I have to be aware of here is how to utilize Murkrow to the best of my ability, because if it goes down too early and then they get Dondozo Tatsugiri combined, I'm in a lot of trouble. Maybe they don't even bring Dondozo Tatsu, but I think Murkrow, one of the main reasons that exists on this team is, of course, to help against Dondozo Tatsugiri teams. But it's going to be Annihilate Garganacl. So, this is interesting because there's Brave Bird on the Murkrow, but I don't know if it's, like, Final Gambit Annihilate. But I honestly want to just Brave Bird Annihilate and Bullet Punch hit on turn 1. Because Garganacl right now doesn't really cause too many issues. The best thing it can do is just click Sulk here. Bullet Punch would do a lot of damage, hopefully where then Final Gambit does not one-shot me. I'm not sure, though. And if they're like a bulk upset, well, Bullet Punch plus Brave Bird would do a ton, and then I can just like Haze Bullet Punch the subsequent turns. I'm just curious if they have Dondozo Tatsu in the back. Otherwise, it would be what? Annihilate, or sorry, Abomasnow Farigiraf, in which Scizor just dominates that. We're gonna Terra. I mean, Terra Garganacl makes sense here, because otherwise you're pretty weak to Scizor. Yep. What is it gonna be? Ghost. Oh no, Poison. This is great for Sandy Shocks, obviously, because I have Earth Power into that. I got absolutely demolished once by a Grass Terra. Garganackle. Oh! They're not Scarf. No! That was so close. Oh, what a shame. It still hangs on with, yeah, hung on with the Sliver. I mean, for now it's fine. But the problem now is that they do have Dondozo in the back, because I'm just going to feint to Sulk here now. And if that Drain Punch did not go off, I would have survived the turn with Murkrow. Oh, unlucky. That's okay. We can now bring out Sandy's Shocks. The main thing with Sandy's Shocks is, like, I want to substitute right now, because I think Garganackle must be worried about an Earth Power. So it's pretty easy to Bullet Punch, Annihilate, and substitute. And, oh, also, this also means, like, now, are you going to Terra? You can't Terra with Dondozo, right? So, Thunderbolt does a ton. So, I'm happy to click Sub and Bullet Punch here. I don't know, part of me just wanted to send it and click Earth Power, honestly, but I feel like there's not that much downside to going for Sub. You know, worst case, they just Salt Cure that slot. Or they Salt Cure Scizor. Annihilate is the one protecting, though, for now, okay. Yeah, I totally could have just KO'd it. Well, actually, I don't know if Earth Power gets the one-hit knockout. Man, I wonder what the roll on Annihilate was, like, the probability of me getting that knockout on turn 1 with that double up. What a shame. Yeah, they still Cure Scizor. It's fine. Getting a free sub is always valuable, right? And now I can just Bullet Punch to KO Annihilate. Earth Power into this. Like, Sandy Shocks is pretty well positioned right now. I just have lost more resources than I would have liked, and it would have been a very different game if turn 1 we maybe get some higher damage rolls there. But that's okay. Annihilate is expected to be a bulky Pokemon. It's just a shame because we actually had the surprise of Brave Bird, and Brave Bird's really good into Annihilate. But they don't protect either Mon here, okay. I mean, if it's just Dondozo Tatsugiri in the back right now, and I just one-shot with Earth Power here, like, we're in really good shape. So close. That's fine, though. Oh, it's not leftovers. Interesting. Sitrus? Ogwaff Berry, huh. And Salt Cure, yep. Takes it. Scizor 109 to 65, so 44 damage. And this is actually one of the reasons... Oh, it is Dondozo. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, given that, like, Garganackle is kind of completely walled right now. I could just go for the knockout, but honestly, what I want to do is, like, I don't care about what Garganackle has to offer into Sandy Shocks. I'm down to just Thunderbolt into Dondozo and then switch Scizor out into Tauros. I think here it's likely Dondozo just protects and Garganackle maybe just clicks Salt Cure. But the thing is that, like, I don't care. I need Sandy Shocks to beat the Dondozo. And if they switch and fuse with Tatsugiri, that's fine by me, right? I think the main thing I should have thought about here is whether or not a Terra was just worth it. Part of me wanted to conserve the Grass Terra here with Tauros. Yeah, Garganackle switches. Maybe Terraing there was correct then, but we'll see. Because they might just click Earthquake here as well. So then, like, Bullet... yeah, I actually think the correct play may have been to just double up onto Dondozo with Bullet Punch, Terra, Thunderbolt. I mean, Thunderbolt's still going to do a ton here, right? Okay, you get your boosts. Does Earthquake knock out Tauros is my question. It doesn't. Okay. Cool. Obviously, substitute fades. I should have gotten Terra here, I think. Let's see how much this does. Terra would have won me the game. The only reason I didn't was because I was thinking they were gonna, like, wave crash. Yeah, that didn't make much sense. Oh, I missed that. That's on me. It's fine. I can protect and switch into Scizor, sacrifice Scizor, but this was... I don't think a guaranteed win, but if I had Terra there, I think we would have done enough to just get the one shot. And the risk versus reward, it did make sense. Like, I thought they were just going to wave crash me, and I was like, oh, I want to conserve Grass Terror and then burn them, but why do that when we can just KO them? I think the main interesting thing here is, do they wait? It's also a question of what item do they have on Tatsugiri. Is it Choice Scarf? Because if not, I can outspeed with both Tauros and Sandy Shocks. This was inexcusable to lose, honestly. I feel like I had them pinned, and you always Electric Terra there. There's just... The only reason not to is because they could have stayed in with Garganacl and actually Salt Cured us, and then we'd get rid of ground, right? So at least now you're neutral. I don't need even... Terra here actually does solve against Wave Crash. So there is still incentive to Terra. So Terra, Thunderbolt, Dozo, Protect. The margins were, yeah, also like them surviving with the Sliver on Tauros, or sorry, yeah, on Annihilate, and then Garganacl was, I mean, a lot of Garganacls just run like max HP near max special defense. So, yeah. I'm just a little disappointed in myself for like having a game-winning play and not going for it, even though I had talked about it. I should have thought a little bit more about how I'd actually, like, whether or not I'd actually Grass Terra with Tauros. Okay, so it's a neutral Earthquake now. And we can still win this game, by the way, so I need to focus on the game ahead, like in front of me, not just be sad. It's going to be so close. Now it's interesting because it means... It means Salt Cure does more to me. I just protected with Tauros is the problem. I mean, if this is Choice Scarf, I just lose the game right now, immediately. So I have to hope it's not Scarfed. I kind of want to just double up on the Tatsugiri here. I don't know, if I Earth Power close combat, Muddy Water just double KOs me right now. I think if you're my opponent... Okay, if they're not Scarf here with Tatsu, we actually win. They are Scarfed. But they miss Muddy Water onto what? Oh, Sandy Shocks. You beast. I shouldn't have won this. I mean, now we just one-shot. Well, I actually don't even know if we one-shot. I don't know. It's Booster Energy and Electric Terra, though. Oh, it survives! They deserve to win this one, though, so, you know, I can't even be upset. You know, it does make... Okay, I thought they missed again. I was gonna say, given that they were actually Choice Scarfed, it meant that even if I found the Electric Terra and KO'd them immediately, I might not still have won this one. So that makes me actually feel a little bit better, if anything, because they were really well positioned to just sweep with late game Tatsugiri with Muddy Water. So, yeah, that was really fun. I mean, my opponent did not have any Paradox Mons, and they won. I think one thing about this format is you don't necessarily need Paradox Pokemon on your team to win. And, yeah, we just came so close to getting the multiple knockouts, but unfortunately just missed out on them. If I had gone Electric Terra that turn, knocked out on Dozo, I guess the thing is I wouldn't have taken so much damage from Earthquake. And then so I can definitely take one Muddy Water, for example, and then my Pokemon would have been healthier. So, yeah, that one mistake, I think, put me in a much worse position. And I should have just gone for it. I think there's very little incentive to actually Grass Terra Tauros, because, like, also seeing how much Thunderbolt did there, yeah, it's just a one-hit knockout if I Terra'd, so I wasn't sure about that damage calc, but it makes sense. You got Booster Energy, same type attack bonus, and the Terra, so, yeah. Anyway, it was an absolute blast to try out this team, and I feel like we faced a wide variety of teams, and of course got to feature Sandy Shocks, which I think is a really interesting Pokemon. Booster Energy, I feel like a lot of people have been using mainly for speed boosts, but yeah, the extra damage you can get from special attack is also super, super valuable. So thank you so much as always for watching. Thank you to Ryota for the team. Check them out linked in the description below, and I'll see you all soon. All right, peace.